Hi everyone, I'm Terry Johnson with Terry Johnson Creates, and this is Terry's Tuesday Tip. So today I'm going to be showing you how you can create this adorable Easter design with just the basic addition of Silhouette Studio. Now you will need some fonts, and I'll list those in the description box of where you can download those fonts. But I think often people are intimidated to try designing unless they have the designer or business edition. And while those are great and they have a lot of great features in them, I want to show people that are new to Silhouette how they can create awesome designs with the tools that they already have. For this design, we're going to be using, like I said, some fonts and also the knife tool. We'll be using the Make Compound Path, Weld, and edit points. The edit points are what make all the difference in Silhouette Studio. This is a fun design that we can use for Easter for all kinds of things. So let's get started and I'll show you how you can create this design. Okay, so last week I shared with you in my Tuesday tip how you could create designs with flexi shapes in the Designer Edition Plus or the Business Edition. But today I want to show you how you can create this cute Easter design in the basic free edition of Silhouette Studio. We're going to be using some drawing tools, knife tools, fonts, and point editing to create this cute design. So I'm going to move it off the workspace to give you an idea of what we're going for, and I want to show you how I created it and how you can create it. Close the offset panel. I'll use that in just a minute. The first thing we're going to do is come over to the drawing tools and select the ellipse or circle. I'm going to draw a long, skinny oval that looks like this. And I want it to be pointier at the end and more narrow at the bottom. So we're going to double click to get point editing. Now, double clicking is one way that you can get point editing to appear and your point editing panel will open. Or I often tell you there's more than one way to do something in Silhouette Studio. I'm going to click on the edit point icon over here on the left-hand toolbar. So when I do that, I get these 4 edit points. So I'm going to click on this one, drag it up a little bit, and then use these handles to make it just a little pointier. I'm going to grab this point, bring it out, and then use these handles again to make it a little narrower at the bottom, and do the same thing on this side. Again, use these handles to adjust the curve. That looks pretty good, like what I want, but I want to cut off the bottom here. So I'm going to come over and grab the knife tool. Now, the default for the knife tool is usually auto apply, but I was working in it previously, so I had unchecked it. And for this project, I recommend that you uncheck auto apply so that you can apply your knife tool manually. The default is also solid, but I want this to be treated as an outline. In the basic edition, you have 4 options for using the knife tool, but for this design, we're just using straight. Now I'm going to hold down the shift key while I draw my knife tool in order to create a straight line. And I think I may come down just a little lower, so I'm going to use my keyboard arrows to move that knife tool down. And when it's where I want it, I'm going to click Apply. Now, you may not be able to see it, but now we have an open path at the bottom. And when I click on that, you can see that the edit points show that this is open. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can see this. You can see there's actually 2 points here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. There we go. That looks a lot more like what I want. Now I want my bunny ear to have some width so that we could cut this out of vinyl or heat transfer vinyl. Now it's an open path, so I'm going to come over. We're finished with the point editing for the moment, and I'm going to open the offset panel. Now when I click on the offset panel with the bunny ear selected, you're going to notice that it goes all the way around on both the inside and the outside because it's an open path. And that's much fatter than I want it to be. So I'm going to take it down to about 0.06 and click apply. So now you can see that we have an offset around our original line that would be the bunny ear that we could cut. So I'm going to delete the original line, and I'm going to right click and duplicate to get a second bunny ear, or I'm going to undo. And you can use the keyboard shortcut Command D on a Mac or Control D on a PC, or you can come up here and say Object, Replicate, Duplicate left or right. So now we have two bunny ears. Okay, I'm going to select them both and fill them in with color just so that it makes it a little easier for you to see. Now I want them to be angled just a little bit, so I'm just going to use the rotate icon and turn them just a little bit like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, nothing special. I'm going to select both of them and group. Again, there's more than one way to group. Command or Control G on your keyboard. I love keyboard shortcuts. If you watch many of my videos, you'll figure that out. You can also come up here and say group, or you can right click and select group. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. So now we have our bunny ears. I might make them just a little taller like this, and I'm going to move those out of the way. Now the next thing we want to create is our banner. So I'm going to come over here again to the drawing tools and select the rectangle drawing tool. We'll make a long, fairly narrow rectangle, and again we want to edit it so that it looks more like this. So I'm going to double click. Now you'll notice this time that, yes, oops, let's double click and get our point editing back. I was trying to close the offset. This time we only get 4 edit points like we did on the ears, but what we want to edit are these long straight lines and the sides. So you can get additional edit points by simply clicking on the line, select that edit point, and I'm going to drag it in to create the little V shape. Do the same thing over here. Click on the line and pull it in, and I'm going to try to get these balanced, and that looks pretty good. So I now have the little tails on the end of my banner. I might bring this one in just a little bit more. Now, we want to curve that top and bottom a little bit. But again, when we have edit points, there are no edit points here. So we need to add them, and we do that by clicking on the line. Now I'm going to click approximately in the center and raise this up a little bit, but it's not curved nicely like this, it's straight. So we're going to click and add another point and bring that up a smidge. Click and add an edit point and bring these up so that you have multiple edit points along this path. Now we may need to raise this even a little bit higher. You're just going to play around with this till you get it about where you want it. Let's move this one. You can also move them on the line so that it's more like this. It's easier to see when you turn off the edit points. And break down just a smidge. Okay, that side looks pretty good. And we can come over here and start working on this side. Bring that up a little bit. Again, click. Raise that. And this might need a little bit more. Click and bring it up. Let's see what we can do here. Let's move this one over here just a little, and this one over here just a little. That looks pretty good. Let's see right here. I'm just going to move that down a smidge. Okay. Now with the bottom, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start here, click on the line to add an edit point, and bring it up. And we'll click here, again here. So you are just clicking and adding these edit points to form your curve. Sometimes it helps to zoom in a little bit so you can see what's going on a little bit better. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. Honestly, I think that looks pretty good. Now let me show you. You can see it a little bit better when you fill it in with color. And I think that is perfect, and I would be perfectly happy with that. We'll size it all down in a few minutes. Now again, I don't want this to be a solid shape filled in with color like I just saw with the red, but I want it to be a wide outline like this. So we're going to come back to our offset panel and click offset. And this time I kind of like that distance, but I'm going to say corner so it's a little sharper on the edges and not so rounded. Now, this is two separate lines. It's our original line and our offset line. And if we try to fill that with color now, it doesn't work. It fills the entire thing. So let me show you what happens. Let's go ahead and try to fill it. I'm going to fill it with color. In order for this to be just the outline, we have to turn those two separate lines into a single shape, like up here. So we're going to right-click, make sure they're both selected, and I don't believe they are. Right-click and make compound path. And now it turns it into one solid shape instead of two separate lines. Sometimes that's a little hard to comprehend. So let me go ahead and fill it in again. And remember, I told you there's more than one way to do things. So this time I had right-clicked. Again, you can go up here and say make compound path. Or you can come over to the modify window. I'm sorry, that's image effects. Let's come here to the modify window and say make compound path. More than one way to get where we want to go. All right, so we've got our bunny ears, and this is probably a little big, so we're going to size it down. I'm just going to align. I know we're not there yet, but I'm going to select both of those, come up to the quick access toolbar, and select align center. And I think that's about where the size, they're proportionate, but I am going to raise this up just a little bit. And we might make this just a little bit smaller. So because I've done that, again, I need to select both, come up here and align center. And now our bunny ears are centered over our little banner shape. Now we're ready to add our fonts. But before we do, I want to show you something. We're going to come over here and use sticky notes. Now, you may or may not know that Silhouette Studio has the capability to include a sticky note with your design. And the reason we're going to do this is because I use several different fonts in this design, and in the future, I might want to know what they are. And you're going to see in just a minute how we're going to convert the text. And when we do that, it's no longer recognizable to the software as a text, or excuse me, as a font. And so we won't be able to identify the font. So what we're going to do is type here, follow, and I know that that is going to be with the font reality. I happen to know, and this is because I've done it, is Lori Whitlock LW Cupcake. Oops. Helps if you put your fingers on the right keys. Also, Bunny is Adora. He has is again Lori Whitlock Cupcake. And Chocolate is Farmhouse Love. So this way I have all of my fonts right here, and they will save. Now they have typed out in the last font I was using, which is fine. But they will save here, and so the next time I pull up this design, I'll know what fonts I used. So this is really helpful when you're designing. All right, let's close out our other panels here, and we're going to open the text style panel. Now, previously I was using Adora Charlie, but this time I'm going to use Reality. And I'm going to go ahead and select my text tool here and come over and type the word follow. Now you're going to see it has a green bounding box, and this is a text edit icon. I'll show you in just a minute what that means, but I want to increase the character spacing here just a little bit, and I'm going to probably make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to click off of the edit mode and drag it till it's about the size that I think that I want it to be, and I'm going to fill it with text. Color, just to make it a little bit easier for you to see. I may make it a little shorter and drag it just a little bit bigger. All right, we're going to click back on it to get our little circle with the arrow icon. And when I hover my mouse over that, you will see that my cursor turns into a 4-pointed arrow. And we're doing this because I want to drag it up here, and I want the text to follow along the path that I have created with my banner. So I'm going to grab that and come up here, and you'll notice that as soon as that little circle hits the banner, it wraps it around. Now, obviously, this is not how I want it, so I'm going to just drag this around till it's a little bit more like what I want. Now, I don't want it on top of the banner, but inside the banner. So in order to do that, we're going to come over here to this slider bar, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. When I hover my mouse over the slider bar, you'll see that 4-pointed arrow again. And as I move down the slider bar, it moves the text to wherever I would like it. And quite honestly, that looks about like what I want. Now, remember I said earlier that we were going to change the text? If I were to leave this text as is and save it, and then go to open it on another computer that did not already have Reality or whatever font I was using installed, it would not open up as the same font. It would select a different font. And that's because the fonts have to be installed on your computer in order for Silhouette Studio to recognize or use them. So for example, I generally work on my MacBook Pro, but sometimes I teach and use my Microsoft Pro. So if I were to open this design on the Microsoft Pro without converting this text, then it would not show up as the text I used. So that's not a hard thing to deal with. I'm going to select my text, right-click, and say Convert to Path. Okay, so now you're going to see that I can no longer grab that little edit box, but I can make it a little bit smaller because I think it's a little big for our space. I'm going to zoom back out, select all, come up again to the quick access toolbar and align center. And I might move that down just a little bit. You want to make sure that it's kind of shaped the way you want before you convert it to a path, because once you do, it's done. All right, so that looks pretty good. The next font that I'm going to select is LW for our own Lori Whitlock. She is the designer for these fonts in the Silhouette store. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but I will link for all of these fonts in the box below the video. And I'm going to again select my text tool and type in all caps the word "the." Now we're not moving it on a path, so I'm just going to add the color and I'm going to shrink it down. It's a little bit bigger than I want it to be. But I am going to increase the character spacing just a little bit. Now I want those little rectangles beside it. So I'm going to come over to the drawing tools and draw a pretty short, skinny little rectangle. I want to duplicate that, so I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, Command for a Mac D or Control D for a PC. You can also right-click and duplicate, or you can actually hold down your Command or Control key and your keyboard arrows to duplicate to the right, left, up, or down. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Now I'm going to place one on this side and one on this side. Now I want them to be aligned all in the middle, so I'm going to select all three and go to my quick access toolbar, select the align tool and align middle. Now I'm also going to use space horizontally so that they're evenly spaced apart. I'm going to select all of these, fill it all with color, and then group it all together. Now, let me go back and undo that. We forgot something. I forgot that I need to convert this text to path. Now we can select them and group. And again, that's Command or Control G. Select them, align middle, center. Now, you could wait and align them all at the end, but I just like to do it as I go. Now our next font is going to be, make sure I get this right, it is going to be Adora. I don't know how to say that other word, but that's what it is, Charlie. And we're going to get the text tool again and type bunny. Now here's our little handle that we're not going to use, so I'm going to go ahead and fill this text with color. Let me go back. Before I do that, I want to show you something. Do you see where they overlap here and here? And often people ask, how do they get rid of that? Because if we were to cut this as is, it would cut a chunk out of the N and out of the Y here, which of course you don't want. So we are going to weld this. Right click and weld. Again, the other way to do that is with that selected, you can go Object, Modify, and Weld, or you can use your keyboard shortcuts, which is Command or Control, Shift, and W. So now those little chunks are gone. It is no longer a font. Do you notice that earlier when I was hovering my mouse over the word, it told you what font it is? But it is no longer a font. It has been converted to a vector object, so we don't have to convert this to path. In fact, if you select it and right-click, convert to path is not even an option at this point, because when you weld it, it already converts it. But we do want to group this together, so I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut Command G to group it together and fill that with color. Now that's probably a little bit bigger than I want it to be, maybe just a little taller, and maybe just a little smaller. This is all personal preference, but it's up to you. Again, select all and align center. Now, these little, I don't know what they are, doodads on the side come from another font that I actually forgot to include. I don't know what to call them. We'll call them glyphs. Those come from a font called Amisteri, I guess, Extras. So, again, we'll come over here, and that's going to pop up. Now, because we're in the basic edition of Silhouette Studio, you do not have the option to view the glyphs in this textile panel as you do in Designer Edition and above. But I happen to know that the glyph that I want is an exclamation point. So we're going to get our tool, come here, and type it in. Now, you're probably going to say, well, how would I know that? You know it, but how would I know it? And I'm going to make this bigger. There's a couple of ways that you can know it. On a Mac, you can look at your font book. There is a font manager, I believe, on a PC. Another way you can do it is simply select that font, type out A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. Look, here's our little banner there. And you can see, and then you can use it for capital, and there's the one that I'm looking for. I mean, that's a way you can do it. If you use a lot of fonts and you want to be able to have that glyph feature, I would recommend upgrading to at least Designer Edition. But we've got it for now, and you didn't have to have Designer Edition. And you can also, we're going to duplicate this for the other side. Now to do that, I'm going to come over to the replicate window, because here I can mirror and replicate in all 4 directions. So I'm going to mirror right. So now we have one for each side. Right here for this one, and here for this one. Now, again, I want these to be spaced and aligned, so I'm going to select all 3, come up to my Align window, Align Middle, and Space Horizontally. Okay, now remember, we don't have to convert this to path because we welded it together, but we do want to group that all together, Command or Control G. Again, select all, Align Middle, and like I said, it's up to you if you want to wait and do that at the end. I'm just a little OCD about it. Now again, we're going to come back over to our text panel and select LW Cupcake. Oops. Lori Whitlock has a lot of fonts in Silhouette Studio. Get our text tool. In all caps, he has chocolate, or just he has. Again, just as personal preference, I want the character spacing to be a little bit bigger, further apart. I'm going to make it black and shrink it down a little bit. We're almost there. Now, I know this is repetitive, but there's actually a method to my madness. Because as you repeat the same thing over and over, it becomes ingrained and you learn it. And that's why I'm a big believer in project learning of the software. If I just told you all of these things as we went along, you would never remember them. But if you are making something and using the tools, then it sticks in your memory. We're going to right click, and if I was in class, I'd ask you what it is. Convert to path. All right, move it up here. I won't align it this time. We'll wait. Now the last word is chocolate, and that font is Farmhouse Love. Okay, now I am going to select my text tool one last time, type the word chocolate. Again, we're not adjusting it. I mean, moving it on a path. Make it about the size that I want. You're going to see that there are some overlaps here, and I might increase my character spacing just a little bit, but we still have overlaps. So again, we need to weld. Again, when you weld, it ungroups everything. We are not going to need to convert it to path because welding it has already converted it. So I simply group everything together, and there you go. Again, select it all, quick access toolbar, align center. I'm going to move chocolate up just a little bit. And there we go. We are all finished. I would at this point select everything and group it together so that once it's exactly where you want, you don't lose it. So now I could save this design by simply going File, Save As, and I'm going to save it to my hard drive. Follow the bunny. Mid-recording, I had to do 2 takes on this in my cut files, and he's all good to go. So yes, I'm going to replace my previous one. Now let me show you what will happen. We're going to close it. And when I go to open this again, my little sticky note is here, and I can still know all the fonts that I used. So I find that to be a really helpful tool. And there you have, with your basic free edition of Silhouette Studio, you have created this design. Now, I will tell you that you can only save it as a studio format. Silhouette Studio Basic Edition is proprietary. In order to save it as another format, such as an SVG or a PNG file, you would have to upgrade your software. And I'll put links for that as well. But I wanted you to see that there's a ton that you can do with what comes in the basic Silhouette Studio software. Okay, so it's just that simple to create designs in Silhouette Studio Basic Edition. Now, I realize there are a lot of tools that I used in there, and they appear second nature to me, but that's because I use the software all the time. And that's what it's going to take for you to learn to use the software. Well, not all the time, but you do need to spend time in the software. So if you could stop and rewind this video and follow along and create the design along with me, then that will reinforce your use of those tools, because there were a lot in there. There was the knife tool, the drawing tool, offset, make compound path, weld, text on a path. But those are great things in Silhouette Studio that you can apply to a lot of different projects. So take a chance, open up your software, and make this design. You got nothing to lose. And if you found this helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe down below, click the notification bell, and share this with your friends in other Facebook groups and things like that on how they can use their basic edition of Silhouette software to create awesome designs. See you next time.